What up, Fight World? It's your boy Ego, and I'm back with some more boxing. Back with my post-fight review for Terence Crawford versus Viktor, the Iceman Postol. And I covered the fight live, and I must say, masterclass boxing, virtuoso performance by Terence Crawford. I want to give you guys my individual thoughts, and to be honest, the fight played out a lot like I thought. And some people, oh, you just picked a favorite. No. See, this is the thing with boxing. A lot of fans are fickle. Before the fight, they'll say this and that, and Postol's going to cause the upset. This is a 50-50 fight. Most people were in agreement that this was the best, most meaningful fight at 140. These were the two best guys. But then after you see a dominant performance by Terence Crawford, all of a sudden, some of the people come up with excuses. Oh, Viktor Postol, who was he anyway? Who had he beat? No, you can't do that because you can't switch it. Now, I don't have to lie. My fight prediction I did on Dante's Boxing Nation. The link is in the description, and I called it. I said Terence Crawford via unanimous decision. Some people picked Crawford by stoppage. I said by decision, right? And I like what Crawford was doing in there. I did a round-by-round prediction, or excuse me, round-by-round breakdown, because I was at the fight. And let's go through some of these tweets, and I'm going to break it down what I saw in this particular fight. Now, round one, filler round, especially in the first minute. Both boxers showing a great deal of respect for the other's pure boxing style, because what I was saying in this tweet is basically they knew they weren't in against some of the more stationary opponents that they had faced in the past, like Celtic Aiden, or guys like Hank Lundy, guys like Lucas Matisse. Those guys are more there for the taking in terms of there to be hit. So both guys respected that the other guy was a pure boxer. Round one wasn't a ton of action, but I gave it to Crawford because I thought he was doing the better work. Round two for Crawford, pretty even round, but in the last 30 seconds, Crawford landed a big punch of note that woke Postol up, and that's what I saw. Round three, that was a close round, but I gave that round to Viktor Postol. Both were trying to work their game plan, and the fight was starting to heat up. But beyond round three, this is where I started to see Terence Crawford pull away. That was Viktor Postol's best round to me, was round three. And Crawford started to, if it was a race, he started to pass Viktor Postol in terms of game plan. His game plan started showing it was more effective, things of that. Crawford is smiling at Postol, making him come to him, which may favor Bud. And I posted that right after that round three, because I still see, even though I gave Viktor Postol the round, I still started seeing a change. Like Crawford started to loosen up. He started to figure out Postol a little bit more, and he was having fun in there. Now, the thing that Crawford probably doesn't get credit enough for, or at least in this performance, but I'm going to break it down for you guys, is he knows that ring. He is a ring general. That's called ring generalship. What I mean by that is a lot of people can be bamboozled and fooled by some of Crawford's performances. Like, he'll choose to go toe-to-toe with Gamboa, and he even got hurt in that fight. Thierry Jean and Hank Lundy. But the thing is, Terence Crawford is smart. He knows who he could do what with, right? So there was some bad blood in the build-up for the Thierry Jean fight and Hank Lundy. He wanted to make good and hurt those guys, so he fought extremely aggressive. But going in against Postol, he knew he was in there with another pure boxer, and he boxed the smarter fight. And I think a lot of people mistakenly feel, because of his most recent performances, that he was going to go in there versus Postol and fight the aggressive fight off the bat. And that's, if you know Crawford, if you watched his work, he doesn't always do that. He switches it. That's what makes him a complete fighter. You look at his fight with Bradis Prescott. He took that on 2 weeks' notice, moved up a weight division against his manager's wishes, Cameron Duncan, and he fought a more conscious fight. But Thierry Jean, Hank Lundy, his recent performances, he was more aggressive, but he uses that ring. Round four, clearly for Crawford. He rocked Postol with about 3 back-to-back shots in a sequence They're sweat flying shots, they're eye gazing, they're eye catching, and he started to open up and get more aggressive. This when things really got bad for Postol. And see, you got to keep in mind, round 3, I told you that was Postol's best round, right? And immediately after, look how this man responds. And that was kind of the notion of the night, if you will, with Terence Crawford, because Crawford, he's a showman in there. He knows how to steal rounds. He's a veteran. Even though he's young, he's a veteran. Like, for example, there are a couple times where the ignorant drunk crowd or whatever, they started booing. There's lulls in action or whatever people were mad at, and they started booing. And usually after those boos, Crawford would step on the gas a bit more and then end up hurting Viktor Postol right then and there. Because he know, like, okay, the crowd's booing, I got to get them back hyped. I got to get them back into it. It was crazy. If you look at the little signs like that, the little things, you'll be impressed with what Crawford did. And then I put Crawford a dog, mean streak, because the mean streak came out. He knocked down Postol twice in round 5. Postol disputed the first knockdown. And this is the beginning of the end. Postol is a tough guy. He's taller. But the unraveling was he was in there with somebody who could give you different looks. Crawford had an excellent game plan that took away Viktor Postol's height and negated his jab. That's literally Postol's best weapon. I seen an HBO stat talking about how Postol had like the highest connect percentage in his division for a jab, and that was his money punch. And then you look at Terence Crawford, and he started to take that away. So guys like Reagan now, guys like Mayweather, guys like Crawford, they're able to neutralize your best weapon. If you know how to shoot the uppercut, if you're great with the jab, they take that away from you. And then it makes you look very, very basic. And the thing is, Crawford did this to Postol. It would be hard for, even when, like, let's say Broner or Danny Garcia, they could possibly beat Postol, but it wouldn't be this type of fight. So you got to give credit to a masterclass performance, because those would be different types of fights. This fight looked this easy based on the person that was in there, which was Crawford. You know what I mean? Other people wouldn't have had this easy of a night. And one of the reasons why I lean towards Postol, and I said this on Dante's Boxing Nation, I do think Postol's power was overstated, because the Lucas Matisse, people were like, oh, he's a bad man. That style bothered Lucas Matisse. Lucas Matisse is not the same size as Terence Crawford in terms of frame, so he was dwarf. He was a lot shorter than Viktor Postol, and he had been through wars, and it's a guy who just really, like I said earlier, he's there to be hit, and he's not really going to put up a fight and a resistance in this situation, because he started getting frustrated. Postol would clinch, Postol would get in close and tie him up, and he couldn't get off his work. So I think he started to unravel and get broken down psychologically. And then when Postol started opening up, then it was a wrap for Matisse. So that was a good win and good performance, but it's a different styles to make fights. And doing that against one person is not necessarily going to be easy for the next. And another fight that really comes to mind, I don't do triangle theories, but Viktor Postol had a tougher time with Hank Lundy. Hank Lundy's crafty, and that fight was a competitive fight, versus when Hank Lundy fought Terence Crawford, who has more tools in his tool shed. Like I said on the radio show, it's a different fight, because I gave Hank Lundy one round versus Crawford, and then Crawford ended up stopping him. So it's a far cry from, you got to know your boxer, you got to study these things, right? Crawford counterpunching too sharp, Postol starting to look discouraged like Matisse was versus him. And that's one of the realest tweets that I tweeted that night. I started seeing a breakdown. I was very close to the ring. I could see the action, and you could see when Crawford was hurting Postol, he was going back to the ring or his corner after. He was starting to look broken down, psychologically discouraged. He didn't know what to do. Again, Crawford is a masterclass boxer, right? And this is my second time covering one of his fights live. The dude, the way he moves is ridiculous. It's like water. He's very fluid. What I liked about Crawford is he used the whole perimeter of the ring when he was fighting Postol. Like, you look at, I don't know what size the ring was, but he used the whole perimeter. He made Crawford come to him. And see, this is the thing. Crawford was doing that, and Postol was coming to him. Like, some people, let me break it down. Some people, they don't understand what was happening. Postol was actually doing a fairly good job cutting off the ring. However, when he was cutting off the ring, he wasn't letting no punches go. So the whole point is, if you're trying to corner somebody, let's say in a school fight or whatever, and you corner them and they're in the bathroom, they have nowhere to run, and then you just said, aha, got you, but you don't do nothing, then, I mean, there's no consequence there. And that's what was happening. Postol was cutting off the ring, but he wasn't doing anything when he was getting in close. He was not letting his hands go. So it's almost a waste of cutting off the ring when you're following and you're not letting the punch go. But what I'm trying to tell you guys is, the reason he was doing that, there is a reason, is because he was afraid of the return fire. Crawford was too good with his counter punching. He was too hard to read. He was given too many different looks. Therefore, he became apprehensive. He became gun shy. And you see this all the time with Guillermo Rigondeaux. Like, look at the Igbeko fight. Igbeko did not want to engage. People complain and blame the fighter. Oh, Crawford needs to take a ring. No, he doesn't. He's up by pretty much, I gave Postol 1 to 2 rounds, and only one of them was like a clear cut where you could say, oh, that was a strong round for him. And even in that round 3, it wasn't that dominant compared to any of Crawford's best rounds. You know what I'm saying? So you can't blame the fighter who's up. If you're up, it's up to the other opponent to figure it out and get it done. And like I said in this tweet, Postol started looking very discouraged, like Matisse was when Matisse fought him, because styles make fights. And when you do what you normally do and that's not good enough, that could be very discouraging. But again, see, this is the thing where people got it twisted. Postol's a good fighter. I don't know who else would beat him at 140 other than a guy like Terence Crawford based on his style. But the thing is, Postol, what he does is it's textbook. He's a solid boxer, but it's flat. It's a straight up and down, right? It's a straight up and down approach to it. Like, he's good with the 1-2. He uses his height, but he could do all those things given a certain style. If you have a different style that's that like his, but greater, like a souped up version, you have a different natural rhythmic movement. You have speed. You have athleticism. You have fluid in and out motion, lateral movement, moving around the perimeter. You could change levels. I mean, that's all different stuff. So, like, Crawford has a more loose version of that, and that's why I kept saying that Crawford has more tools in his tool shed. Postol's good, but he'll look exceptional. He'll look at like John Molina versus Ruslan Provodnikov. John Molina, given the style of Ruslan, absolutely no defense, no head movement, comes straight through the front door. John Molina was out there looking like he was a masterclass boxer. That was because of the style matchup. But when you watch Adrian Broner versus John Molina couldn't do anything, and he was actually trying to outbox Adrian Broner, and that was a foolish decision. He should have just bum rushed Broner like Maidana was doing. So it's all based on the style. You can have, like, Postol's going to look like a against Lucas Matisse based on his height and based on his like standard textbook boxing. He's going to look like the man versus that. Versus Celtic Iden, he's going to look great versus guys like that and just break them down because they don't know how to deal with this height. But when you get with someone who's a complete fighter and a souped up version of what you do, it's a different ball game. You know what I mean? Like, Canelo's a good boxer puncher, but going in there with Mayweather, who does everything better, who's looser on his feet, who's faster, who has more accurate punches, then you've seen what happened. He got dog walked. Postol following with good balance, but not throwing enough offense. And that's what I just talked about. Postol was following. The whole point of cutting off the ring, like Gennady Golovkin was one of the prime examples of this. He cuts off the ring, but he'll fuck you up. That's basically it. That's what you're supposed to do. You're not supposed to freeze and oh, I got you. Like, you trap someone. Like, if I'm trying to catch let's say a rabbit, and I'm not calling Crawford or any fighter who fights like that a runner, but let's say someone is fidgety, like a rabbit or whatever, and they're not just there to be. No one's supposed in boxing, unless you don't have the skills to do it. You're not supposed to be a sitting duck and just sit there and wait for someone to pulverize you, right? But let's say I'm trying to catch a rabbit, and then I get it cornered, and I don't do anything. Then the rabbit's going to find a little way, find an exit, find a way to navigate away from the danger. And if that rabbit can punch back, then you might get fucked up by the rabbit. Postol letting semi-even rounds that some judges may have given him get stolen by Crawford late rally and giving up big shots. And that's what I noticed all night. Like, there's certain parts of rounds where maybe you would be like a judge would be partial. I'm like, oh, Viktor Postol did that. He was good in that round. It was better than his last round. And he would get bombed on in the last 30 seconds and let the showmanship and how Crawford was having fun in there take him out of where you can't even give him that round. Crawford picking off Postol when he comes in. Problem is Postol is down. He knows this. He has to get more aggressive, but that opens him up. Now, this is my personal opinion. I think that Postol was acting like he was doing enough to not get knocked out, but he was acting like he was like aggressor. And he even said this post-fight, like, oh, I thought we were two champions and I was pushing for the fight. But you can't do that, because if you're down exponentially, you're dramatically down in the scorecards. You got to do something. You got to find a way to negate what he's doing. And it got to a point where he needed something big, a knockdown, a knockout, because he was down too many rounds. Plus he had a round where he got dropped 2 times. So I mean, he's dramatically down, and he's doing enough to make it look like he's game. I've seen fighters do this all the time. It's very hard to explain, but they're trying to give the best in presence, or the best presence that they're in the fight, and they're really trying to win, but them not letting their hands go tell you otherwise. Because if you're really trying to win, you have to go for broke at that point. You have to put it all on the line and be willing to go out on your shield. Like, you can't just give the appearance of like, yeah, I'm really trying. And that's why a lot of fighters that are master class, like Floyd, Rigondeaux, Terence Crawford, they receive some criticism, because when it goes to the decision and they don't get a knockout, then people are like, oh, why didn't he step on the gas? But you can't do that, because he's clearly up. And for someone who's clearly up, no one's trying to get Mickey Bade, where Mickey Bade's dominating John Molina, outboxing the hell out of him, frustrating him, and then he gets lured into the wrong fight at the last minute and gets dropped or knocked down or looks suspect. So I'd rather have a flawless performance, and people could try to critique that and say, oh, you should have got more aggressive. But even not getting quote unquote more aggressive, you're still bodying your opponent. Versus if Crawford started doing too much dangerous stuff when he's well up, and then Postol somehow dropped him or knocked him out, then imagine that criticism. So I don't blame these fighters. You got to fight the smart fight, and it's up to Postol to change the ebb and flow of the tide. Like, he's the one that did something. What boxing fans do is complete ignorance. Some, like the casuals, it's like, let's say you have a girlfriend and you cheat on her, and you expect her to apologize to you, and you're the one that fucking cheated. That doesn't even make sense. You know what I mean? You're the one that needs to make amends, just like in boxing. Crawford is the one up. So the person who's down, the person who needs to be impressive, that is the person that needs to go for broke and stuff like that. And the reason you don't see that is because they know that if they open themselves up that much, getting that aggressive, they're already getting a small taste or a taste of what's to come. So they fight Rigondeaux, they fight Crawford, they fight Mayweather, and they're like, man, I'm getting touched and I'm semi-aggressive. I'm still trying to be calculated. Imagine if I open all the way up and get all the way aggressive. Then what's going to happen? I'll probably get sat down or knocked out or embarrassed more. And that's what it is. So what I seen from Postol, he was trying to make it like he was game, but he wasn't doing anything. Like, he wasn't winning the fight. You know what I mean? And that's clear. Watch like Nonito Donaire versus Omar Narvaez, right? Like, okay, he's looking like it. Or Leonard Bundu even. Like Leonard Bundu versus Keith Thurman. Keith Thurman had him hurt Keith Thurman was clearly up. Leonard Bundu's like herky jerky and he's like doing movement. He's doing all that. That's good. But he's clearly not doing anything to win rounds. He's just hanging in there and he's doing, I call it doing enough to not get knocked out. Like, he knows he's down. He doesn't know how to figure out the puzzle and he doesn't want to make any foolish mistakes. So they're kind of content going the distance because they'd rather that than go out on their shield and do like look at Canelo versus James Kirkland. Kirkland, whether you love him or hate him, he's willing to go out on his shield, and that's what that fight showed you. He was down, he knew he was down, but he only knows one way, and that's the warrior way. So that's why he got stretched out by Canelo, right? Because he was just going for broke, trying to do it. It paid off when he fought Angulo, who has less technical ability than Canelo, and he just did the warrior way and broke Angulo down. But it didn't work with Canelo, you know what I'm saying? So if fans want to complain about the fighter who's down and the fighter who's not doing what they need to do to get back into the fight. And that was Postol. Crawford running Postol into some nasty counters. He just checked Postol's face off and he has him backing up too much. And that's kind of what I seen. I got to watch the telecast because I was covering it live, so I don't know what Freddie Roach was saying during this. But bottom line is, he needed to do something big, and he was just getting suckered in. I like Crawford how he has like this jab, and it must have some power behind it. I think it's real snappy, but it's like a pawing jab, and it always gets people's respect. I've seen him do it several fights, and it's just bad when the shorter person is out jabbing you. It doesn't make sense, especially when it's not like Postol's a tall non-boxer, like he's just a brawler. Sometimes you see tall brawlers who they don't know better, but a guy who's known for a jab, who's tall and uses his height well against lesser opposition, it's bad to see him getting out jabbed and not make Crawford pay for coming in on the inside, but that's what happens. Bud is just tricky. And then I tweeted, Postol needs a knockout to win, end of story. That's how I seen it. This was going into the 12th round. I said that, and that is what it is. Not sure I agree with the point deduction, but Postol did do repeated aggressive rabbit punches out of frustration. Tony Weeks deducted a point. Didn't seem like he had like any kind of warnings, but they were aggressive enough infractions where Weeks decided to do the point deduction. I mean, I personally, if I was a referee, I probably wouldn't have deducted it. He was already drowning anyway and losing. Clearly, he already had knockdowns, so I wouldn't necessarily put him in the hole like that. But that didn't have shit to do with the outcome of the fight. That was one point, and even if he had that point, the scorecards were too wide. So even if that point didn't get deducted, he still would have clearly lost. And then I put Crawford dismantled him via decision. Like I told y'all, I know my shit. The boy is bad. Crawford Postol, and I mean, I told people what it was gonna be, and it's really because styles make fights. There's no other way to put it. Styles make fights, and Crawford is just on another level, and it showed. Postol did not know what to do. Again, there's a far cry from doing that to Lucas Matisse, a guy who's been through wars with some mileage on him. He didn't want no issue when he couldn't get in on the inside, and then when he did, he was getting clinched, and he didn't want to deal with all that. And then when Postol opened up his offense, he was able to stop him. But you're not going to do that against someone who's not going to just be there for you to just, you know what I mean, like some flat-footed fighter who's just going to be there for you to pick off and use your height and keep him at range. See, with the guy like Crawford, you got to keep him at range. Now, another thing that I liked that was great, since I give you guys the good and the bad and the ugly, I already told you the good. Crawford was sensational. Another good thing is that people, if I don't know, because I've only seen a few comments, but I've seen some of the hate already start. Crawford in that 12th round, and I even asked this in the post-fight press conference, he was clearly up. He didn't have to go to war, and he was engaging with Postol and basically giving Postol an opening by having throw caution to the wind war, and he still was getting the better of that in round 12. So you got to give Crawford props because he didn't have to take a gamble like that. He didn't have to take a risk. He was clearly up, and he didn't have to do something dangerous. But he has that mean streak, and he has the mind of a fighter, and he's trying to punctuate. He was still trying to knock him out. And I honestly feel like the knockout probably would have came had Postol fought more reckless. Like, you know what I'm saying? If he just said, oh, fuck it, then he probably would have got knocked out, because he was getting hurt and he was still trying to be methodical. He wasn't doing anything. So, dominant performance. The bad is for Postol, just because I think he could have done more. The jab, I mean, regardless, you have to make those adjustments. And I also think the bad was he made a lot of excuses. Freddie Roach was actually surprisingly honest, and he said, "Oh, we just couldn't deal with the guy's speed. He's a great fighter." You know what I mean? Sometimes you see Freddie Roach take the back door as well. Postol seemed like pissed off about the loss, emotional about the loss. But if he goes back and watches the tape, it was a clear-cut loss, and nobody did that but him and his team and his game plan. Like, you know what I mean? It wasn't like a robbery or anything. He wasn't even in the fight like that. He didn't have many great rounds. So I thought Crawford did his thing, took unnecessary risk. I was like, damn, he's going to war in the 12th round when he's clearly up. You know what I mean? We've seen what happened to Mickey Bay in the John Molina fight in the 12th round. I've seen that happen. Meldrick Taylor, Chavez Sr., and things like that. So risky stuff, but he felt he had everything in control, so he didn't care. Let me know what you guys think. That's my post-fight breakdown. Excellent performance. Drop in the comment section. Share the video. Like the video as always. Hate, comment, and subscribe. Till next video, it's Ego signing.